Okay. Trying to get my phone together because this is my crappy live stream. So I do it on my phone. But what's up, everybody? Happy Monday to you. Another week. We're in it. We're in it. We're in it. Can't go back now, but one day down. So I was just catching up on my YouTube video feeds and I kept seeing this new allegations of Diddy, and I never pay attention to these things really because I'm just like, I'm tired of hearing about Diddy. Like, I'm waiting for the trial, right? I feel like everybody and their mama is coming out of the woodworks when it comes to this man. So I'm more of a sit back and see kind of thing. I think that everybody is innocent until proven guilty. I think that there are a lot of things being said about this man. And, I would not doubt that many of the things that are being said about Diddy are true. But, again, there's a lot of sensational allegations coming out. And again, these are only allegations until they're proven to be true. Right. And I think that's where people have to really understand these lawyers are paid to craft a narrative to garner public sentiment about things, especially if they're trying to take a celebrity down, right? So, and we know the track record of these things. Hello, how are you, Richard? So, I think when it comes to things like, allegations against celebrities, no matter how believable they may be, it is always wise to take everything with a little grain of salt there because, again, some of this sensationalism, there's a lot of money that can be organized to take certain people down. What's going on? I'm glad you're doing great. So I'm listening to these allegations against Diddy, and there's some new ones. And apparently, there is a lady named Ashley Parham who has just, came out with an amended allegation or lawsuit against Diddy, and she's naming a number of other people. And two people she is naming is Odell Beckham Jr. and the comedian YouTuber Drewski, right? Now, both of these men have come out and said that these are fallacious. They're denying it in their own little way, you know. But nevertheless, these allegations are on the table. Now, and what is this sister's name? I want to make sure that I give her flowers. Her name is Chronicle Speaks, okay? Is the one who has the full lawsuit. So I would say go check out Chronicle Speaks to get the full lawsuit. But as she was going through this lawsuit, there was a couple of things that were automatically triggering for me. And I'm just like, what are the odds? What are the odds that the same person would somehow be involved in another allegation of assault by a celebrity? Like, what are the odds that the same exact person would deal with that? So there's an item in here I want you guys to hear her say that I thought was very interesting. And this, again, this says a lot about somebody. Again, I can't say that not all of these people are victims, but I just thought that I'm like, what are the odds that somebody would, be one of the plaintiffs in the Michael Jackson assault case against minors and then turn around and be involved in this lawsuit against Diddy? What are the odds of that? Like, I'm sure the Hollywood circles are small, but to me, I mean, the odds are just really interesting that this so-called plaintiff or John Doe is consequently an individual who was a previous plaintiff against Michael Jackson in the essay, situation against minors. So let's hear her sister.
Who have preceded her filings and others who surely will follow, including plaintiff Doe's herein. Plaintiff John and Jane Doe met with defendant Diddy through their connections in the music industry, as plaintiff John Doe was a previous plaintiff against Michael Jackson.
So she met with, so plaintiff John Doe was a previous plaintiff against Michael Jackson. What are the odds of that? What are the odds? And again, I'm not saying that these people aren't victims, but again, some of these people, I think they can be paid. Again, child trafficking, child grooming, right? Some of this stuff goes beyond, a kidnapped kid. Some of these people are raising their kids to be groomed and to be agents to set people up. Not saying this is the case, but I'm just saying, it's just some of the stuff in this lawsuit is a little, raising flags for me. What are the odds that they would have
assault
these
as a
connections?
minor due to defendant Diddy's agreement to participate in a corrupt enterprise.
And then it jumps right over into Diddy's corrupt enterprising and him being, obviously shaking these people up. But I want to go to the assault allegations. Now, this woman says that she was set up by this guy named Shane, who apparently, I guess, Shane I guess he was around a bunch of people. She was one of them, and she ran her mouth and said that she didn't like Diddy because she felt like Diddy had something to do with the murder of Tupac. Now, mind you, that was a rumor. That was a big rumor back when I was growing up. When it happened, I grew up around that time when Biggie and Tupac died. And obviously, they have that East Coast, West Coast rap beef stuff. So, a lot of people thought that Puff had something to do with Tupac's death. But, obviously you're not going to say that to Puff to his face, and then you wouldn't think that, Puff is a billionaire. This is a famous guy. He's at least a multimillionaire at this point. You wouldn't think that this guy would have his dude, set some random broad up who said that about him. But apparently this woman is saying that Puff is so petty that he had this dude set her up to basically get this situation that she ended up walking into at his home, where she was basically, let her tell it in this lawsuit, Drewski played her like a slip and slide, like a big ass whale going down a slip and slide. This is according to the allegations, right? Puff violated her with the remote and then violated her himself, and then Odell Beckham. But some of the things that really are just like, if I were cross-examining this woman, I would be like, okay, you say that, you were flipped, like, because according to her allegations, Puff instructed his security, or Shane, this guy, to flip her over on her stomach so that he could not hear her screaming, and he didn't want to see her face. So according to the victim, she is on her stomach with a pillow over her face. And then she says that, these two more people walk in. If, in fact, these two other people were Drewski and Odell Beckham, how would she know? Like, how would she know? Because she did not say these people's names, right? She just said that the other guy who violated her had a nice body, a nice physique. And so I'm trying to figure out, how would she have identified that as being Odell Beckham, right? And even with the Drewski thing, Drewski is saying I wasn't even famous back then. I really didn't even have connections like this. So what are you talking about? So again, this is another victim where her timeline is a little bit off. Now, if they say this woman got a touch of autism, I know these lawyers are trying to play autism as a way to make these victims believable. But this woman is saying, though, that these men did this to her in 2018. So I did a little digging because I don't really know too much about these people. And so as of 2017, Drewski started doing his comedy skits on Instagram. He started building his following, right? So he would have had, depending on how big his audience grew between 2017 and 2018, he would have had some recognition if he had some people that really liked his content or whatnot. He would have. It is not impossible for him not to have started establishing industry connections relatively soon if his videos were taken off, because look at how many YouTubers kind of come up overnight, and before you know it, I mean, Bobby Altoff is a perfect example of a YouTuber like Drewski, come out of no fucking where, and yet this woman is interviewing all of these top rappers, right? Culture vulturing like a mother. But she's an example of that, right? So, I mean, I'm not gonna say that Drewski is not right, because again, when you're talking, he was like, he one of his some of, I guess part of his excuse was that I was living with my mama, I was broke at that time. But I was reading something where he got connected with Odell Beckham, and this was actually through Puff that Odell Beckham and Drewski got cool and revoked, but that didn't happen until 2021. And this is after you're talking about 3 years after this woman alleged that these men did this to her. So it's interesting, though. I don't like to follow the allegations against Puff, but there's some other things about, what this woman is saying that I'm just like, every victim, responds differently. But what I thought was really weird is, and I want to get to the point where they done got done doing what they were doing to her, and now tired of fleeting health fads and let me skip the commercial. They done did what they did to her. They go out to have smoke, basically. She rushes to find her clothes. She couldn't find her clothes. She puts on a sweater or this t-shirt, right? A long t-shirt. She grabs a knife, right? And this is what she's saying. And then she said the only way to leave the house to get to the street was through the back way of the house. So let me get back into Chronicle Speaks.
Violently arred in her feminine region by defendant Diddy with the television remote, as well as the lingering pain from the ordeal with the IUD syringe insertion. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to turn plaintiff on her stomach, seemingly tired of hearing the plaintiff's blood-curdling cries. Defendant Shane then grabbed plaintiff by her abdomen and hips and turned plaintiff on her stomach. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to put a pillow over her head because he didn't want to see her face or hear her cries, and instructed plaintiff Shane to take advantage of plaintiff from her backside. Defendant Shane did as he was told by defendant Diddy and began to take advantage of plaintiff's backside. Defendant Diddy then violently arred plaintiff by her backside as well after defendant Shane. Defendant Doe number 2 then joined defendant Diddy and Shane, taking turns taking advantage of plaintiff's backside. Immediately after defendant Doe number 2 took advantage of plaintiff, he exited defendant Shane's residence. Defendant Diddy then instructed another defendant Doe to also take advantage of plaintiff. Defendant Doe has been determined to be defendant Drewski. Instead of immediately taking advantage of plaintiff, defendant Drewski doused plaintiff with more oil/lubricant and then jumped on top of plaintiff's naked and oiled body, treating it like a slip and slide and knocking the wind out of plaintiff.
Can you imagine that big ass whale pummeling upon your body with some baby oil? Like, he knocked allegedly knocked the wind out of this woman when he tried to use her body as a slip and slide, allegedly.
Enormous size. Defendant Drewski.
But what I don't understand is that she said that, they walked into the room, but apparently her face was covered. Like, she's saying that she's on her stomach, her face is covered. How did she know
then
it was
caught
Drewski?
himself from sliding over plaintiff's oiled body and off the bed. He then began taking advantage of plaintiff's feminine region. While defendant Drewski was taking advantage of plaintiff, defendant Diddy sat in a chair near the bed and began to pleasure himself while recording plaintiff's R by defendant Drewski. Another part.
Diddy is sick. If this is true, Diddy is sick. Like, of all the dudes that you just want to sit there and watch smash somebody, Drewski, like, this dude is sick. This dude is absolutely sick. I mean, the sickness is real. Like, you got to be just mentally ill to want to see that thing doing anything, let alone violating somebody. Like, You can tell this dude has no chill
Party's
if
phone
this is
fell on the
true.
bed near Plaintiff. Plaintiff then attempted to grab the phone, but it slipped out of her hands and onto the floor due to the oil/lubricant that had been doused all over her person by defendants Diddy and Drewski. Defendant Diddy began laughing at Plaintiff's attempt to grab the phone. Throughout the violent gang R, defendant Diddy made constant belittling remarks to Plaintiff, including that he owned her now. At some point during this ordeal, Plaintiff remembers defendants referring to another defendant Doe as Cornelius and remembers the name because it was so odd and unique. Plaintiff has come to discover that defendant Doe Cornelius, who R'd her, was defendant Odell. Plaintiff's body was becoming more and more limp over the course of the violent R until eventually she had no control over her body, nor could she move her body. While defendant Drewski finished R'ing plaintiff, defendant KK entered the room to examine the condition of plaintiff, who was barely able to move or control her bodily functions. Defendant KK examined plaintiff to see if she needed assistance and was about to give plaintiff an IV fluid. Plaintiff could not be certain if she did or did not receive such intravenous intervention. Defendant KK then opened a different bag, different from the one defendant Diddy removed the oil from, where plaintiff observed several medicine bottles, IV fluid bags, and other unidentifiable powder-like drugs. Defendant KK then removed a pill from one.
You know, this speaks a lot to the people who wanted to be aligned with Diddy. Like, it speaks a lot to the people that were around him. I mean, they were obviously Diddy was, he aligned himself with equally sadistic people. Because there's no way if you see somebody, your employer, treating other people like in that manner, they're actually telling you, now I want you to violate this person. I mean, none of these people around Diddy act like they had any faculties of their own. Because if you're listening to Diddy tell another grown man to violate a woman, right? So, these people, none of these people are really innocent in the broad scheme of things if these allegations are true, because again, these people are taking orders from this man to commit crimes. So, I mean, this is where the RICO really comes in with a lot of it, because it's like the more people you have in the mix of the shitty things you're doing, the more it becomes an organized crime. That's why they catch so many of these rappers and these people doing all these shicey things on RICO charges, because there's a whole lot of people that know about what's going on. And they have incentives, or they've been incentivized to be quiet until the incentives run out, of course.
One of the medicine bottles and gave it to defendant Diddy. Defendant Diddy then inserted the pill into plaintiff's mouth and down her throat to where plaintiff had no choice but to ingest the unknown pill. Defendants Diddy, Shane, KK, Odell, and Drewski then exited the residence to the backyard where they smoked marijuana and cigarettes. Plaintiff remained in an almost lifeless state in defendant Shane's bedroom until she finally regained her bodily functions. Plaintiff began looking for her clothes in her purse that contained her car keys and her cell phone, but could not discover them in the room or anywhere in the apartment. Plaintiff was only able to find a t-shirt on the floor, which she put on to cover her naked body. Plaintiff also observed a black condom wrapper on the floor of the bedroom, which she assumed was used by one of the defendants, most likely defendant Diddy, during the R. Plaintiff then found a knife with the assistance of the Doe's plaintiffs and headed to the backyard where the defendants were smoking, as that was the only way to exit the premises onto the street. Plaintiff concealed the knife on her left side as she exited the apartment to the backyard area. Upon coming to the exit of the home, which led to the backyard, plaintiff was met by defendant's big homie Cece, who was standing at the door between the residence and the backyard. By the time plaintiff was able to compose herself and come to the backyard, defendant KK was no longer in the backyard, but upstairs on the patio balcony with defendant Brandy. Defendant Doe allowed plaintiff to walk to the backyard where defendants were still smoking. Defendant Doe did not see the knife that plaintiff concealed on her left side, as it was obstructed by the oversized t-shirt plaintiff was wearing. Plaintiff observed defendant Diddy still partially nude from the assault, while the other defendants had on their clothing. Defendant Shane then left to the upstairs portion of the patio balcony where defendant KK and Brandy were already situated. Plaintiff then sat down on the makeshift seat in the backyard when defendant Diddy noticed her presence and remarked that he was surprised she was still able to walk because he had given her enough drugs to take out a horse. Plaintiff then asked Diddy what he gave her, and he laughed and did not provide a response. response. Defendant Diddy then made further comments to plaintiff in a jovial, friendly manner, asking why they hadn't partied together before because it was so much fun and he hadn't had any ass that tight in a while. Defendant Big Homie Cece then quipped at defendant Diddy that he probably hadn't had ass that tight because he's not used to having backside sex with women, which defendant Diddy and Doe laughed at. Plaintiff then told...
Okay. I'm a little confused about this. So they did all of that horrific stuff to her and she was able to go out. Nobody seems to be attacking her, right? She sits down on a makeshift seat. As opposed to going towards the street or, kind of getting yourself away from these people in this element. Like I'm trying to, I guess, is it like a fight or flight moment at that point where it's like, I don't even care about the flight. I need to fight. I'm trying to figure out why she didn't try to just get out of the situation so that she could get help for herself. She sat down and
told defendant Diddy she did not party with him and she did not enjoy partying with him and that he R-ed her. Defendant Diddy did not like plaintiff's response to his lighthearted commentary and offered plaintiff money and instructed plaintiff to say that the violent R was consensual and that plaintiff was a sex worker. Plaintiff became enraged and yelled at defendant Diddy that her R was not consensual and that she was not a sex worker and she refused to take any money from him.
Now, mind you, I'm a little confused here because again, now you're arguing with your rapist, right? You're having a dialogue about what this guy just did to you. You did this to me, right? And it's like at this point you're not getting justice from this guy. You're not about to get justice from this guy or any of those guys that just did that to you. You mean your justice comes when you bring in the legal process, right? And, again, I guess I'm trying to figure out why she's sitting up there, talking about something, you did this to me instead of getting out of there. Because my whole thing is, if somebody is, that violent enough to do that to somebody else, right? Then to me, there it's reasonable that they can take it to other levels. I mean, that wasn't just a him, you did this to me, y'all did this to me, right? She's talking to Diddy, talking about you did this to me, but it was y'all. It was multiple people according to this woman. So it's like, I'm a little confused as to why she's trying to negotiate this conversation with him. Just get the hell out of there at that point, if you can.
And would tell the police that he had R-ed her. Defendant Diddy then told plaintiff no.
So, again, all right, I'm a little confused. Because, again, he just did this to you. Now you're going to tell him that you're going to tell the police. Why are you telling him anything? Why are you telling him what you're going to do? Why aren't you getting the hell out of there? I don't get this at all. I don't have time to negotiate with terrorists. I don't have time to negotiate with these essay rapist type of people. So I'm getting the hell out of there really, really quickly if I can. I'm going to try my best. Damn my car keys, damn my wallet, all that stuff, because whatever, it's compromised anyways. I just need to get in a neutral situation where I can have some level of control, right? She's talking about she's going to tell the police that
no
he
one
raped
would
her,
ever believe she had been R-ed by him. And if she did tell anyone such, that they would harm her family. Defendant Big Homie Cece then showed plaintiff his phone, which looked as if it was outside of plaintiff's estranged sister's residence, as she could see her sister sitting on a couch and her sister's spouse on the balcony. It looked as if someone was outside the residence streaming this video to defendant Big Homie Cece's phone. Plaintiff, while still rattled by what she was seeing on defendant Big Homie Cece's phone, was still angry about being gang R-ed and was not complying with defendant Diddy's request to take the money being offered to say that the R was consensual. Defendant Diddy then called defendant Janice in an effort to further convince plaintiff not to report her assault. Defendant Janice yelled at plaintiff to not hurt her son. Plaintiff told Janice that her son had violently R plaintiff. Defendant Janice, seemingly unfazed by the statement, then continued her demand with plaintiff to take the money being offered and not report the R to law enforcement. Defendant Diddy then made further threats that he had gotten off from bigger crimes than this and referred to Tupac again, further antagonizing plaintiff. Defendant Big Homie Cece turned to defendant Diddy and pulled his pow pow on him, asking him to repeat what he had said in reference to Tupac. As the two of them were exchanging words, plaintiff went behind defendant Big Homie Cece, where he seemingly began to protect plaintiff. Defendant Big Homie Cece then advanced to defendant Diddy, questioning him over the comments he made about Tupac. During this commotion, a neighbor directly across the street came outside and peered into the backyard and asked what all of the commotion was about. Defendant Big Homie Cece then pointed his pow pow at the neighbor and instructed him to mind his business and return to his residence. Defendant Big Homie Cece then turned the pow pow back on defendant Diddy. Plaintiff, not far behind defendant Big Homie Cece, tried to grab defendant Big Homie Cece's hand that had the pow pow. The pow pow then went off and hit the hill behind defendant Shane's residence. Defendant Diddy then ran up the back stone stairs near the hill in the backyard towards where defendant KK, Shane, and Brandy were. Plaintiff charged towards defendant Diddy, moving the concealed knife from her left hand to her right hand and in pursuit of defendant Diddy. Plaintiff then pushed defendant Diddy from behind while on the stone stairs outside, causing him to fall with his back to plaintiff. Plaintiff then raised the knife in a rage from the events that just transpired and with the intent of driving the knife into defendant Diddy's back when he turned around and began pleading for his life. Plaintiff, shocked now to see defendant Diddy acting as a victim, had a moment of clarity and then turned and ran down the outdoor stone staircase back out to the backyard to escape. Defendant Diddy then chased plaintiff down the stairs and attempted to push her, but she was already at the bottom of the stairs and gained her footing and wielded the knife at defendant Diddy, grazing his abdomen. Hearing the commotion, defendant KK and Brandy emerged, and defendant KK then administered first aid to defendant Diddy for the injuries caused by plaintiff. Plaintiff tried to make a quick dash for the exit, but it was thwarted by another defendant, Doe. After a period of time, plaintiff was able to abscond from defendant Doe due to the first aid commotion with defendant Diddy and was able to run down the street. Once plaintiff made it onto the street, she began yelling loudly for someone to call the police. Defendant Doe, who had now caught up with plaintiff, advised plaintiff that he was an undercover cop. To this day, plaintiff is unsure of the truth or falsity of that statement. The same neighbor then again emerged from his residence asking what was transpiring. Just as plaintiff was attempting to answer, gunshots began being fired in plaintiff's direction. Plaintiff fled to a car near where the neighbor was also taking cover and lost sight of defendant Doe. Plaintiff then heard an SUV screeching and speeding, leaving the residence. Plaintiff then entered the home of the neighbor, who informed her that he had already called police. Plaintiff informed the neighbor that it was Sean Combs who had R'd her and shot at them, but the neighbor was unaware who defendant Diddy was. Shortly thereafter, a sheriff from the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department arrived at the neighbor's home. Plaintiff identified the person who arrived at the neighbor's home posing as a Contra Costa sheriff was defendant Pelletier. So she ended up staying at the neighbor's house for some time, but she didn't really know who to trust because this person that was posing as a police officer didn't take her home, didn't take her to the hospital, didn't call for backup.
Hey,
so she's
Sean.
like, what kind of police officer is this? So she stayed at the neighbor's house for a short time. Then she went back to Shane's house so she could further look for her keys and her purse and her phone so she could leave. Shane acted as if...
Okay, this all seems just really just like it seems interesting. It seems like Diddy had his own cops. The neighbor said he called the cops, right? Whoever cop showed up obviously probably was a Fed. I don't know, right? But they were able to sweep this over. But she goes back over to the guy who sets her up house, right? To look for her keys and all that good jazz. I get maybe where her head is. I don't know who to trust. This cop is saying he's a cop, but he's not offering to take me home. There's no backup coming. I mean, it doesn't sound like this is a real situation in which she's dealing with the police.
If nothing happened, and he told her that she wasn't in any condition to drive home and she needed to sleep it off. He left the house, but the next morning he came back. He gave her keys, her purse, and her phone, and so she left. Now, she ended up calling her primary care physician and asked for an HIV and STD test in fear that she may have contracted something. Now, she tried to continue on with her life, but she was in fear that something would happen to not only her, but also her family, because you remember, big homie Cece showed her that video outside of her sister's home. Now, she says miraculously before the attack, Shane began driving a new car, and she believes that car was payment for what later transpired. Now, she went to the hospital and told the staff there what happened, but she did not mention Diddy's name. Now, a different police department came to the hospital and took a statement, and she also filed a police report with the Walnut Creek Police Department and left her underwear as proof. But since then, she has not been able to retrieve the police report or get any resolve from either police department. So let's get into plaintiffs John and Jane Doe, who are mother and son. Now, plaintiffs were taken from their Las Vegas residence by defendant Pelletier, that's the fake police officer, as they walked to their vehicle. Defendant Pelletier put a pow-pow to plaintiff John Doe's back and instructed him to get into a black SUV regarding extraditing plaintiff for warrants to California. Now, plaintiff did not have any warrants.
Okay, this is just a big stinking mess. Let me go to the chat here. I mean, I got so many questions here. This woman sounds like, I mean, if this is true, obviously these are just allegations, but it sounds like, I mean, some of this stuff don't even sound right, because it's like, I mean, she spent the night at the same place that she got violated by this man and his friends, right? She's still at Shane's house. She is still at Shane's house after all of that. She is still at Shane. Hang on, let me mute this. But I don't understand it. Can somebody explain it? Like, most women, they are getting out of Dodge. Like, I don't know any women that will be still at that house. You said they had her drug. I get that, but I mean, she's saying that she laid down, like, after everything happened, because we don't know what duration of time has went by between all of that and the time where they went out smoking, because she said they all went out smoking in the back or whatever, and she was basically laying there, like she was just kind of laying there and for a while, lifeless, not lifeless, but just stuck in her mode. And then she was able to get herself up, and she was able to find some clothes, and she was able to go out. And I guess she was low energy, so the only place that she could sit was next to Diddy outside to talk about and basically tell him what he did to her, right? Not run or try to get out of there. I don't understand it. But then this exchange between Big Homie Cece and Diddy erupts, because I guess he was talking about Pac's death, right? And then all of a sudden Cece flips, and he goes from showing her pictures of her relative to pulling the gun on Diddy, which, gives her the opportunity to get the hell on, right? But she wants to, kind of in a vengeful state with her knife, she wants to get at Diddy too, as opposed to just getting the hell on, right? So you got enough energy to do that. Then you get enough energy to run away, because now you're being shot at. So you got the adrenaline to go there. Now you're at the neighbor's house, right? How the hell did you get back to Shane's house? Like, I mean, I don't care how many neighbors' door I need to knock on to get a ride back to my hood, but I'm not going to spend another night there. I'm going to go and find some real cops that are going to go to Shane's house with me so that I can get my keys and my purse, and they can properly investigate what happened, Like, a lot of this is not really sounding right to me at all. Like, and I'm not saying that this woman is not telling the truth. It's just that, how did you get back to Shane's house? How did you spend another night at Shane's house? Is what I would be asking her, Like, what made you make that decision? Did you have no other options? The neighbor, there was nobody that you knew, somebody that could let you use their phone to maybe contact somebody, log into your Facebook or something like that, send out an email to somebody you know so that somebody could come and get you so that you didn't have to stay at the house of the people that violated you, the man that set you up. Shane basically let her tell it, backdoored her. She got backdoored by Shane. So, and obviously Diddy asked this dude to do it, but it's interesting the things that she is saying though. Let me get back because I mean, I get you're scared. Maybe your drug, maybe the new drug got it.
Plaintiff demanded to be shown the warrants, and defendant Pelletier refused and threatened to shoot plaintiff if they protested further. In the back of the SUV was defendant Valdez. Defendant was unknown to plaintiff at the time. Defendant dressed in dark clothes and instructed plaintiffs not to look at him. Plaintiffs were then transported to what they believed was defendant Pelletier's residence at blank 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 Bay Street, Las Vegas. Plaintiff was ordered inside and brought into the living room and forced to sit on the couch and were physically restrained. Plaintiffs demanded to speak to their attorney, which was refused, ignored, or met with threats of violence. It became obvious to plaintiffs that this was not a legal arrest and that Pelletier was acting outside of colors of law. At some point thereafter, plaintiffs were ordered to the back of a large black SUV. Defendant Gonzalez was given the keys to plaintiff's vehicle, a SUV, to follow behind the SUV. Defendant Gonzalez and Pelletier had a list, which upon information and belief was a list of safe houses which they could allow parties a safe respite undetected. Defendant Pelletier appeared to be in charge, and he and defendant Valdez were both giving out orders to the other co-conspirator defendant. Plaintiffs overhear repeated conversations in the vehicle while being kidnapped and transported about following protocol made by defendant Pelletier to brutal assault on Loma Vista Drive by defendant Jaguar and Helena. Defendant Helena was the driver.
Hold on, this is worse than the
for
Jaguar,
mercy.
right?
Defendant Valdez remembering cross streets when they were finally let out of the vehicle for stops. At this location, plaintiffs observed an RV recreational vehicle arrive at the residence. During this stop is when plaintiffs noticed defendant KK was part of the convoy. At this stop, plaintiffs overheard KK being referred to as her code name, believed to be her middle name, Natasha, discussing visiting the UC Berkeley campus, as defendants seemed very familiar with the area and familiar with the city. Upon information and belief, this location was approximately 7 miles from the home in Orinda where plaintiff was assaulted. Plaintiffs were taken to another location at the Beacon Grand Hotel. Sir Francis Drake, defendant Shane, worked at the hotel as a manager. Plaintiffs were taken into the hotel through what appeared to be a side entrance by defendant Valdez, Pelletier, and Gonzalez. Defendant Pelletier told the co-conspirator defendants he would stay at a different hotel nearby so it wouldn't be linked to him. Once inside the hotel, plaintiffs were beaten and drugged by defendant Valdez and Gonzalez. Plaintiffs pleaded with Valdez and Gonzalez to be released and for mercy. Defendant Valdez and Gonzalez instructed plaintiffs to sign paperwork at gunpoint. When plaintiffs refused, defendant Gonzalez would pistol whip plaintiffs on the back of their heads. Defendant Gonzalez eventually gave plaintiffs a drink, which caused them to pass out. Plaintiffs spent the night at the hotel with defendant Gonzalez and Valdez taking turns watching them. The next morning, plaintiffs were restrained and bound by their hands in front and were placed into a vehicle. Plaintiffs then saw defendants Jaguar and Helena. That's Jaguar Wright. Upon information and belief, defendants Jaguar and Helena were in a small sedan, light-colored, white or beige. Plaintiffs were then transported to the location of plaintiff Parham's brutal assault on Loma Vista Drive by defendant Jaguar and Helena. Defendant Helena was the driver and defendant Jaguar was the passenger. Defendant Helena warned plaintiff if they tried to escape or run that she would have to shoot you. Defendant Helena also warned plaintiff not to throw up in her vehicle, saying, "You better not throw up in my car or get sick." Defendant Helena mentioned having two partners as backup who were bounty hunters. Plaintiffs were familiar with defendant Helena as she had filed a lawsuit against superstar singer Michael Jackson in 2005 and filed a creditor's claim against the Jackson estate upon his untimely demise in 2009. Plaintiffs were familiar with defendant Helena from her previous Michael Jackson lawsuit and had previously met with defendant at her home in West Hollywood to determine the credibility of her claims and if they were similar in nature to plaintiffs. Plaintiffs had reported defendant Helena multiple times to the LA and NOC FBI field officers for her role in the crime syndicate with defendants Pelletier, Valdez, and other individuals. Plaintiffs attempted to make conversation with defendant Helena, in which she admitted she was the same person who plaintiffs had met with previously. Defendant Jaguar, aggravated, stated, "You let them know who you are? That's really great." Plaintiffs noticed defendant had large brown bags and manila envelopes full of cash that was banded. It appeared they were separating the large sums of cash to distribute as they were placing cash into the manila folders. Defendant Jaguar discussed with defendant Helena how the party started the first black-owned network. Upon information and belief, plaintiffs believed the network to be Revolt TV. Defendant Jaguar and defendant Helena discussed the other co-conspirators, but referred to them by their middle names: Natasha, defendant KK, Pedro, defendant Gonzalez, Lyra, defendant Valdez, Cornelius, defendant Odell, and Larry, shortened to Lawrence, defendant Pelletier. When defendant Jaguar said Cornelius, it upset defendant Helena, who said that defendants Odell and Drewski were her clients and nothing better happened to them, and plaintiffs better not say anything about them or she would have plaintiffs unalive. Defendant Jaguar then told plaintiffs they were being taken to meet John. Plaintiffs now know that was referring to defendant Diddy. When defendants arrived with plaintiffs at the Loma Vista location, it appears as they were waiting and coordinating for others to arrive. A large sedan arrived and plaintiffs were placed in the back with defendant Valdez. Defendant Pelletier was driving. Plaintiffs then arrived at a short driveway curb.
This is a lot going on, y'all. Like, again, this is why we leave it to the internet lawyers and sleuths to do all this reading aloud for us. It's like an audiobook. So shout out to Chronicle Speech for real, because I just wouldn't have been interested in a lot of this stuff. But interesting. So Diddy had his own cops. He had his own feds. I've always thought that Jaguar Wright was a little off. And again, she could be telling the truth because she was probably right there in a lot of stuff, allegedly, according to this particular lawsuit. Jaguar was right there. She was an op. It seemed like they're working with code names here, and again, a lot of these people, and I'm going to go back to, when I did that live stream about that young lady who talked about, her kind of surviving, you know, trafficking. And she was talking about the very influential people that she would pass through, from the ages of 5 to 11. And a lot of these people, she was saying that, these kids are not just being used as slaves. They are being programmed as agents as well. They are being leveraged, if you will, to build collateral on each other. So she talked about how all of these wealthy people in this elite circle, this elite ring that she was a part of, nobody trusted anybody, right? They were all trying to get collateral on the other person, and they were leveraging these kids, these agents, to, get collateral on other people. So when I'm looking at like a lot of this stuff that's going on, it just seems like, you have a lot of these people like who are just ops and agents, right? And, some of them are coming off as victims, but then you see how they act, you see how they're behaving. You're like, you seem more like an agent than a victim. It's like Ray J. Like somebody would really have to convince me that Ray J is not a straight up agent, and that Ray J has been intertwined with a whole lot of stuff that he's trying to act like he's innocent about. And even when I was listening to Amber Rose's interview with Shannon Sharp, and she was acting all oblivious, like, oh, I didn't know about these freak off parties. I mean, if, I was, if these things happen, they didn't happen at any of these parties that I went to. And it's like, these people like to play dumb when it's convenient. But, my thing is, these devil type of people like Diddy, they are pretty consistent, right? Their arrogance make them really consistent. They are the same sadistic person in one scenario as another. Just like when there were allegations that Denzel Washington left a Diddy party because he was so inhumane to one of the young dancers. The girl had to use the bathroom. She ended up using the bathroom on herself. He ended up having her, like, I don't know if he made her eat it or what it was. It was something very disgusting and vile, and it disgusted Denzel supposedly so much that, he left. He called him a sick man. A lot of these people know what a lot of these elite type of people like Diddy are capable of doing, but they choose to be around these people because it's clout. I'm around this person. It makes you look bigger than what you are, but you really standing tall with the devil, you know? But anyways, you said it could have been Drewski. I don't know. I mean, a lot of these people, again, once you get into certain circles, it's like the rooms. How far would you be willing to go? You know what I mean? There's, door number one. You know what I mean? Maybe you sell your soul a little bit. You give away your soul in a way that you can kind of come back from it. Door number two, you got to get a little bit more harder, right? This is where they're going to be asking you to do things to really prove that you really want something. How bad do you really want it? Do you want it, bad enough to sacrifice the innocence of a child by taking care of, by taking advantage of them in a very, horrible way? There are a lot of people that want things so much that this is why the Bible says in 2 Timothy 3:1-5, in the last days, the people on earth will have no natural affections. That's why you can see a mother who can kill her son over an HDMI cord. These are, just extreme things that you see among human beings. It's just not natural. And this is the world that we live in, where people can sit there and because they got a little power, they can violate the dignity and the humanity of someone else, allegedly, right? Because again, there's a lot of people coming out of the woodworks, coming up with sensational stories about what Diddy did to them, right? And, a lot of parts of her story just don't make any sense to me, judging on how horrific she was treated, but she was able to go into the neighbor's house, the one who was shot at. I'm assuming this was the neighbor that was shot at, who called the police, told her that they were calling the police. And yet somehow some Fed police ends up showing up. Nobody is really doing cop-like things. Like if I was her, that very suspicion would have been like, can I just use your phone so I can call somebody? Can I get on your internet? Can I contact anybody that's my people? Right? She obviously, I don't know if she was just too scared to do that, what the situation was, but somehow she did not make it back to her home that day. She ended up going back over and allowing this Shane person to convince her that she was not in a condition to drive. Or somebody convinced her that she was not in a condition to drive. But it's like, okay, that's fine. Let me use your phone so I can call some of my people. Next day, she gets her purse, she gets her stuff, and she's able to leave, right? I don't know. I don't know if I would have been able to sleep in the house that I was just violated like that, I mean, I'm pretty sure the prosecutor is going to be asking a lot of questions. I mean, whoever's going to cross-examine this woman, they're going to be asking her a lot of questions. Like, because some of this is like, man, I mean, I get it. You're probably in shock, but it's that fight or flight. You're running for your life at that point once you get free. And it seemed like she had a lot of opportunity to get free. And she was just like, okay, everybody is upstairs except for Diddy. I'm sitting next to her and convince him that he did this to me. You know what I mean? And then, her saving grace was really when big homie Cece got into it with Diddy about speaking on Tupac. And even then, while these two were having their pissing match, she didn't just take that opportunity to get the hell on. It's like you have to get a piece of the action too. It's like, man, damn that, damn them. I'm out of here. This is about my life at this time. I don't give a fuck about Tupac at this point. He's gone. I'm trying to still stay here. So I'm not about to be up in that mix. It's just a weird situation. And then we're going into Jaguar right now. The lady who's been singing like a canary about this and that, right? Being very ambiguous about everything. Everybody's trying to figure out how the hell did Jaguar Wright know all these things. Some of the stuff it seemed like she knows because of hearsay, right? And it's like some of the stuff for Jaguar, I'm like, you wouldn't really know that unless you were really there. And so this woman is saying that let this woman allege Jaguar Wright was really there, in a capacity that, was not in her favor or somebody else's favor. So interesting take. I think a lot of these people are ops. I think Charleston White is an op. I think Jaguar Wright is an op. I mean, I really just think these people are psychological operations. They're just psyops, all of them. But let me know what you guys think about these new Diddy allegations. Drewski obviously is on the mic saying that no, this is not true. I feel bad for real victims, but this woman is kind of her timeline is off because I wasn't even famous during that time that she's claiming that this happened. Odell Beckham is like, I'm washed with the blood of Christ, so I guess that'll vindicate me. It's like, all right, dude, whatever. All right, Odell Beckham. He was baptized in 2018. Odell Beckham was baptized in 2018 in the Jordan River, right? He was baptized in the same year that this woman claims that he was a part of this, vicious attack on her. So let me know what you guys think. Shout out again to Chronicle Speaks because she's basically boiling down all of this. This is about a 40-minute overview that she's going through, but apparently this woman
plaintiffs remember looking for intersecting street signs at this location and found blank, a dead-end street off of Loma Vista Drive. Plaintiff John Doe repeated the name of the streets to himself so he remembered and was able to whisper into Jane Doe's ear to remember the intersecting street name blank. Plaintiffs believed this was the home they were to be murdered in and tried to devise a plan for escape. Plaintiffs were brought into the house and into the kitchen where they were watched by defendant Gonzalez. Plaintiffs repeated their pleas to defendant Gonzalez to be released and for mercy, which he replied, there's nothing he could do. Plaintiffs could hear other people inside the home and tried to listen to understand what was happening, which included a woman's scream. Eventually, plaintiffs were led deeper into the home where they encountered more individuals, including defendant Diddy. Plaintiffs observed several individuals gathered around a bed while defendant Gonzalez and Valdez stood outer guard. Defendant Jaguar told plaintiffs he wants something you have. If I were you, I'd figure out what it is really fast. That he, defendant, was referring to is believed to be defendant Diddy. Shortly after, defendant Drewski appeared wearing a vest and shorts, and he engaged in conversation with plaintiffs. Plaintiffs tried to appeal to defendant by talking about the music industry, and defendant instructed plaintiffs that they should cooperate. Plaintiffs described what they observed during the assault of plaintiff Parham after the interaction with defendant Drewski. Plaintiffs observed plaintiff Parham having an IUD forcefully placed in her female regions by defendant KK with the assistance of defendant Brandy. Plaintiffs heard
Do you know? Okay, so now these are other people co-signing. You said Odell was letting Justin Bieber top him off at the I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these people are sexual deviants. I mean, it's just, I would not be surprised. I mean, again, this is Satan's world. A lot of these people done sold their
KK
soul.
make a remark about how plaintiff Jane Doe would not need an IUD because of her age. Not KK with the ageism. While hearing plaintiff Pyram scream in agony during the forceful IUD insertion, plaintiff Jane Doe yelled, "Stop hurting her!" Plaintiffs observed defendant Shane place a pillow over plaintiff Pyram's face, basically obstructing her breathing, and plaintiff Jane Doe yelled for them to stop or that she will be unalive. Plaintiff Jane Doe believes plaintiff Pyram did lose consciousness because she became limp and unresponsive. Defendant Diddy instructed defendant Valdez to shut her up, and defendant Valdez hit plaintiff Jane Doe with the handle of his firearm. Plaintiff John Doe witnessed plaintiff Pyram being assaulted by the remote, and when he tried to say something, plaintiff was told to shut up or they will put the remote in him next. Plaintiff John Doe believes he heard defendant Jaguar make remarks, "Put the remote in her. She's going to learn today," and telling plaintiff Pyram that she was going to make it worse. Plaintiffs believe the remote assault was to punish plaintiff Pyram for the IUD failure. Plaintiffs heard defendant KK remark to defendant Diddy and Drewski that she needed to keep them sufficiently drugged and revealed a bag full of drugs and paraphernalia. Defendant KK appeared to be distributing doses to defendants, asking them their weight to administer the proper amount. At some point, plaintiff John Doe was taken to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, he believed there may have been other tenants and began to bang on the walls, hoping someone would hear him, but the only person who heard him was defendants Valdez and Gonzalez, who were outside keeping watch. Upon plaintiff John Doe's return, he saw defendant Odell. Plaintiff John Doe took immediate notice of defendant Odell because when he took his clothes off, plaintiff remembers defendant being in great shape, especially in comparison to the naked bodies of defendant Diddy and Drewski. Plaintiff John Doe overheard defendant Diddy and Odell discussing business and plans to have plaintiff Pyram return to New York with defendant Odell. Plaintiff John Doe could not readily observe where plaintiff Jane Doe was during this time. While during this time where plaintiff Jane Doe was out of sight of plaintiff John Doe, plaintiff Jane Doe was being essayed by defendant Valdez in another room. Plaintiff John Doe witnessed the gang guard plaintiff Pyram. Plaintiff Jane Doe witnessed the gang guard plaintiff Pyram. Plaintiff John Doe witnessed defendant Drewski douse plaintiff Pyram in baby oil and then jump and slid across her body. Plaintiff John Doe observed defendant Diddy and Drewski manically and hysterically laughing, which plaintiff attributed to their drug use. Defendant Diddy then attempted to force plaintiff John Doe to also assault plaintiff Pyram, and he refused. Defendant Diddy instructed defendant co-conspirators to throw plaintiff John Doe into the wall several times in order to get him to comply with his demands to our plaintiff Pyram, which he would not comply. Defendant Diddy instructed defendants co-conspirators to yank, grab, and pull at plaintiff John Doe's manhood violently in an effort to punish him for not participating in the gang R plaintiff Pyram.
So no wonder why these dudes were just like, sure, okay. When Diddy's like, your turn, it's just like, I mean, if these dudes were under that kind of duress, where I mean, look at this dude who refused to do it. They yanking on his junk and all kinds of things. They apparently, if you do not participate in their deviancy, you are going to be tortured.
Doe remembers defendant Big Homie Cece saying he was going to look for pliers to use to further torture plaintiff. Plaintiff John Doe believes defendant Diddy wanted plaintiff to R plaintiff Pyram so they could frame him in the event plaintiff Pyram reported her assault. In an effort to get DNA from plaintiff John Doe to place on plaintiff Pyram, defendant Diddy had one of the defendant co-conspirators orally copulate plaintiff John Doe to get his man juices from him, but it failed. Plaintiff Jane Doe observed defendant KK return to the room to check on plaintiff Pyram and provided her an IV, telling her to breathe deeply. Plaintiff John Doe watched plaintiff Pyram lose consciousness. At some point, plaintiff Jane Doe returns after defendant Diddy, Shane, Drewski, Odell, KK, and others leave the room and retire to either the backyard or the upstairs patio. Plaintiffs were left alone and unattended with an unconscious plaintiff Pyram. Plaintiffs were crying after observing the assault upon plaintiff Pyram and began to realize this was their next chance to devise a plan for escape. Plaintiffs began looking for weapons and exit points to make their escape. Plaintiff could not find any phones or any weapons like knives in the kitchen, as it appears all the cutlery and silverware had been removed from the home. Plaintiffs were trying to act quickly while the defendants left them unattended and were outside smoking, drinking, and loudly laughing as if having a party. Plaintiffs observed others outside believed to be Diddy's sons, Christian and Quincy. Plaintiffs observed them roughhousing and practicing layup basketball moves. Plaintiffs heard defendant Diddy tell his sons to watch the gate and make sure no one left. Plaintiffs observed defendant Gonzalez outside the front door, where the front door was barricaded by yellow crime scene-like tape. The door lock was unusual as it was facing backwards, needing the key to exit. Fearing no way to escape, plaintiff Jane Doe mentioned to plaintiff John Doe that she overheard them say, "Put it on top of the refrigerator," and instructed plaintiff John Doe to check and see if there was anything on top of the refrigerator. Plaintiff John Doe found a knife on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Plaintiffs then heard ramblings from the room plaintiff Perham was in and went in to check on her and stop her from making too much noise that could thwart their escape plan. Plaintiffs told plaintiff Perham they weren't going to hurt her and they were here to help. Plaintiff Perham, just now coming into consciousness and being horrifically gang-ard, was upset, terrified, and unsure if plaintiffs were trying to help or were also co-conspirators. Plaintiffs eventually were able to get plaintiff Perham to calm down and listen to their escape plan. Plaintiffs told plaintiff Perham they could not find an exit to escape and needed her help to escape, otherwise they would all be unalive. Plaintiff Perham, after experiencing her ordeal with defendants, believed plaintiff and agreed to help in an escape. Plaintiffs told plaintiff Perham that they had found a knife and that her assailants were in the backyard, which was believed to be the best exit for escape. Plaintiff Perham then exited the home with the knife concealed to the backyard. Shortly thereafter, defendant KK returned and took plaintiff Jane Doe to the balcony, leaving plaintiff John Doe alone in the residence. Plaintiffs believe defendant KK did not check the residence because she believed plaintiff Perham was still unconscious. While on the balcony, defendant KK demanded plaintiff Jane Doe sign documents. When plaintiff refused, defendant yelled to at least 2 Doe bodyguards. Plaintiff would not sign and asked them to assist. Plaintiffs believe the documents were related to creditors' claims plaintiff had filed against the Michael Jackson estate. During this interaction, parties hear a gunshot, which causes everyone to run towards the backyard where the shot came from. Plaintiff John Doe, who was left alone and unattended, was able to reach the stairs where he saw plaintiff Perham with a knife, looking as if she was about to stab defendant Diddy, and he yelled out, "Do it! Stab him!" But he saw plaintiff Perham hesitate. Plaintiff John Doe observed defendant Diddy push plaintiff Perham down at the bottom of the stairs, and plaintiff John Doe believes he assisted her up. Plaintiffs were then briefly reunited, and plaintiff John Doe told plaintiff Jane Doe now was our opportunity to escape. Following plaintiff Perham, plaintiff ran out of the back gate onto the street and in the opposite direction of plaintiff Perham. Plaintiffs arrived at the house next door to the residence and banged on the door and yelled for help. The wife came out and said that she and her husband couldn't help. Plaintiff found the exchange bizarre and couldn't understand why they would not help or call 911. Plaintiffs were then able to...
I wonder were they Negroes? And if this was a pristine white neighborhood, you know them white folks, they're like, look, it ain't got nothing to do with us. No, we don't want to have anything to do with it.
Some of them folks until they saw an officer report to the location where they attempted to speak with the officer. Before plaintiffs were able to speak to the local officer, defendant Pelletier appeared and obstructed plaintiffs from speaking to the responding officer, telling the responding officer a federal investigation was ongoing and not to interfere. Defendant Pelletier...
So here we go, dealing with feds. Like, again, and I'm going to say this until the cows come home. If Diddy wouldn't have sued that alcohol company... He wouldn't have got too big for his britches, right? We wouldn't know any of this stuff. That man was heavily protected by the feds for a long time. I think he was an agent. I think he was an operative like so many of these people are. And so with that being said, I'm not surprised that just feds are coming out of nowhere, you know, to save or salvage this situation, just like I'm pretty sure they came out of nowhere to conceal that video of Cassie for so long. This man has been protected from a lot of this evil that he's been doing for all these years up until he crossed the wrong people and became a burned asset, in my opinion. I think that Sean Diddy Combs is a burned asset, just like I believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a burned asset. And again, Bill Gates said that Jeffrey Epstein tried to bribe him, right? So imagine how many higher elite people that Jeffrey Epstein tried to bribe, right? He got too big for his britches. They used him as an op, somebody to get collateral on all these types of people that they didn't, you know, that they wanted to be able to take down easily, right? And the best way to take people down is that evil file stuff, right? And that's exactly what these people, they get too big for themselves, right? Because they're coveted. Everybody's looking for them. Hey, I need something on this guy. So they're doing favors for so many different types of people, right? Until they just become too dangerous to even exist. I mean, and that's what it is, especially when they start knowing the power that they have and the collateral that they have on other people, right? They become too dangerous to even exist. And especially when they start bribing folks or suing large alcohol conglomerates. So, again, a lot of this stuff, 2018, this sounds very, very bizarre. You have the cops immediately involved in an accusation of gang violation, right? You have multiple witnesses running scared from one residential house, and nobody, not even the cops that they run into, are able to help them. You have this traumatized victim who can't seem to find a ride home at all, so she ends up spending the night at the very guy's house that set her up to get violated in that manner in the first place, it seems. So, lots of stuff going on in this situation that I'm just like a hot stinking mess. This is why I don't cover Diddy, because this stuff is just sadistic. A lot of these allegations are sadistic. I mean, and even if none of this is true, it the imaginations of liars is just straight sadistic. So let me know what you guys think about this. A lot of people are trying to remove themselves from Diddy. Apparently, these victims are even saying that Diddy's sons were
Told the
there
officer
playing
to turn off his body
basketball.
camera. Defendant Pelletier told the officer he was working on a case for drug trafficking and had the house under surveillance and will report later to the local precinct. Defendant Pelletier referred to plaintiffs and plaintiffs' Pyram as suspects and said they were homeless. When plaintiffs tried to refute these claims by defendant Pelletier, they were threatened and told to shut up and remain quiet. Defendant Gonzalez then transports and removes plaintiffs from the interaction with defendant Pelletier and the responding officer. Defendant Gonzalez placed plaintiffs in another vehicle, which was hard to see due to the darkness. Plaintiff Jane Doe pleaded with defendant Gonzalez to let them go, and she would not tell. In a last-ditch effort, plaintiff told defendant she overheard defendant Jaguar and Helena say they were not going to pay him and that there was not enough money for him. Unbeknownst to plaintiffs, defendant Jaguar and Helena were in a nearby vehicle. Defendant Gonzalez exited the vehicle and went to the vehicle with defendant Jaguar and Helena and confronted them about what plaintiff Jane Doe said. Defendant Gonzalez returned to the vehicle where plaintiffs were being held, seemingly confirming what plaintiff Jane Doe said because plaintiff heard him use the Spanish term mayate, which is often used as a slur towards black people. Defendant Gonzalez then walked plaintiff to a nearby street where the SUV was parked and gave plaintiffs the keys to the vehicle and released them. Plaintiffs then arrived at Blank, the main road that leads to I-24 highway, and asked another commuter the nearest police station, as plaintiffs did not have any phones and their vehicle did not have GPS. They were given instructions, they were close, and how to proceed to the police station. Plaintiffs arrived to the police station at 22 Orinda Way, Orinda, California. Plaintiff John Doe walked in the police station with the intention of filing a police report, but remembered overhearing conversation from the defendants during their transport when defendants believed he could not hear them, that if plaintiffs ever reported the incident, they would be deemed crazy and non-believable. Plaintiff John Doe was also concerned about the exchange with the responding officer on the scene and how he refused to listen to his plea then. Plaintiff John Doe then only briefly spoke to someone at the front desk about filing a report and took a business card. Now, I do want to say all of these people are innocent until they're proven guilty in a court of law. But I do want to say that she states that defendants Odell and Drewski received benefits related to their celebrity, specifically defendant Drewski, who had a television show on Revolt TV network. They believe that Valdez, Jaguar, Pelletier, and Helena received and handled cash payments on behalf of the enterprise, and the defendants willfully ignored the dangers of defendant Diddy's conduct and pattern of harassment as assault, abuse, misconduct solely for their own personal economics.
So, what y'all think about Jaguar Wright? Like, I mean, do y'all think that she's just this oracle? Like, people were just acting like she was just such an oracle on the internet. And it's like, if anything, I think that Jaguar Wright probably got immunity. I think that she's probably singing like a canary because she knows that she probably has some kind of immunity. Ain't nobody just out there talking like Jaguar Wright is talking, unless they've been involved in some kind of way, whether they were a victim or a participant that cut a deal. Right? That's the only way I can think about somebody like Jaguar Wright. You're either a victim or somebody who cut a deal or both, right? Because I think that, a lot of these victims can turn into victimizers and start repeating cycles of bad behaviors too. So I don't know, y'all. I don't think what's going on, Ghetto Planet. I see you. I don't think Jaguar Wright is as innocent as she keeps coming off. I don't think she's an oracle. I think that she was probably there seeing some shit. She was probably a lot closer to some shit than people. Because at first I thought Jaguar was more like a hearsay person. She was saying a lot of stuff that was rumor mill on the streets back in the day, anyways, right? But, in some degree, she might have been there. Drewski's getting popular. It's suddenly under scrutiny now. You know, when I see people start dyeing their hair blonde, that platinum blonde tip, I start thinking about somebody that has sold their soul. I do. When I see the platinum blonde tips, you look at your favorite celebrities, right? Lil Durk. Lil Durk came out normal as hell. Soon as he got into the industry, blonde tips. Megan Thee Stallion, all of these people, they eventually go blonde. They go blonde with the tips, all kinds of crazy stuff. So I don't know. I just look at that as like a weird sign that, this person might have sold their soul out into being famous. And I'm telling you, nothing will get you fame quicker than being on that Moloch stuff. A lot of these people are Moloch and Baal worshipers. And these people understand what it means to human sacrifice, human denigration. These are all ways in which these people have to prove that they're willing to do anything for fame. So who knows? I don't know Drewski from Adam. I've seen little commercials. I've seen him do little goofy things. I think he's more extremely goofy than anything. But a lot of these people, fame, they will do anything for fame, even be involved with some crazy stuff like this. Not saying that he was, these are all allegations, but yeah, these people, a lot of them are devil worshippers. They're Satanists in very little creative ways. And a lot of people like Puff Daddies, they're like Puff, they are like Diddy is literally, to me, he's like a madam in this warlock world of, satanic people. He just drafts people into it, right? He needs more sacrificial lambs as a part of it. I personally don't even think Cassie is as innocent as we're being led on, but I think that she got a great deal. I think when you can tell all, sing like a canary, you can cut a lot of deals to get yourself some immunity. I don't think she's even as innocent as they're making us believe that she was. And again, sometimes the very victims can turn into villains as well. So, anyways, the timeline is low key adding up. I mean, when you think about it, you're talking about Diddy's Revolt show. That was 2021. But her allegations, the timeline doesn't add up unless somewhere between 2017 and 2018, Drewski just blew the hell up. And he had like crazy connections by 2018 because he's right. I think that it's, I know my son is not pissing in this toilet and not closing the door. Like, having boys, it's everything is random. But anyways, you guys, I don't know about Drewski. I mean, that's a hard one to say. Odell Beckham, maybe, right? But Drewski, that would be a hard allegation to see through, just because. But you see his name coming up multiple times. This person is adamant that it was Drewski that was the one that violated her. So you said Cassie was never innocent, but feminism is protecting her thanks to the security footage of her getting hit by Diddy. Oh, for sure. That was the footage that we needed to basically absolve Cassie of anything she might have been involved with. It's like, oh, well, he did anime Bullock you. He did Ike Turner the hell out of you. Right? So we got to just, we got to give you a pass on anything because you were abused. Right? But that girl could have been a madam that whole time. But, anyways, you said how's Trump working for me? Trump doesn't work for me. I mean, right now he's working for a cabal of people that are not me, but we should hope that whatever he's working on will trickle down into people like us eventually. But again, the American economy sucks. And if anybody thinks that Donald Trump is going to come up in here and be Jesus, he's not Jesus. He's a fleshly man. He's just not going to fix what has happened to this nation for decades. You don't do that in 4 years. I think it's kind of stupid for people to be sitting up there like nothing gets better. It's like this man has been inaugurated all of like what, less than 2 months, and y'all expecting for him to turn water into wine, you idiots. Right? I mean, you think about your own financial situation and crises, right? It took you probably, you got into that debt really quickly, but a lot of times it takes a lot of time to dig yourself out of that debt. And you got to start getting out of debt by cutting spending drastically. A lot of people get out of debt because they cut their spending drastically. They only buy and spend what they absolutely need to buy and spend on, right? And so maybe this idea of economics that Trump is implementing, like I knew that Americans needed to be here. I felt like we should have just started implementing these measures in 2020 and then people would have been used to it. But what do I know? I'm just a black woman with a low IQ. Remember, black people don't know anything, right? So, people don't tend to listen to what we say, especially the intelligent ones with actual high IQs. And when we say that you need to make these economic adjustments now, you got to get people used to where they're going to be at right now. Back in 2020, nobody wants to listen, right? Now the humans have to adapt to even more shit. So I just sit back and I watch things play out. So there's that. But anyways, you guys, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Let me know what you guys think about this new Diddy allegation. This is a very detailed allegation, but number one, let's look at it. She's talking about this happened in 2018. It's 2025 now. So I'm curious about, it hasn't been 7 years. I don't think it's been 7 years for the statute of limitation for anything. There's that. Two, they're claiming that there were police interactions on this in relation to this particular incident. So I'd be curious to see what type of evidence actually come out about these claims, because again, this is a lawsuit where a person is basically stating everything that happened to them. But again, we still need to see police reports. We still need to see police reports. And if they can't produce a police investigation or a police report, these are as good as things that people are alleging. So let's see what happens. Another allegation to add to the Diddy pile. Shit's crazy. This is crazy. Who has caused more issues for the black community? The white liberals or the white conservatives? I would say both of them. Both of them. I mean, I think that the white liberals, they do a good job of trying to own the black narrative, own the black image, narrate the black image in certain ways. And even the conservatives do that too, but they're just not invested as much as the white liberals are. The white conservatives, to me, they're a perplexing bunch because you have the segment of white conservatives who are adamant in upholding white supremacist mindsets, and they are adamant about black inferiority complex, and actually white supremacist mindsets is something that really they cleave on to, because obviously if many of them really peeled back the layers of supremacy, they realized that your average black person was probably a little bit more supreme. And I'm talking genetically too. White supremacy is very much an illusion, and even they know that. And if you don't even, I mean, just ask the sun. Just ask the sun. Melanated people just don't have those kinds of problems. Just saying, God would never make a son to burn his own people. But, anyways, you guys, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Let me know what you guys think about Diddy. I did a live stream earlier talking about the rapper Doechii, right? She's a big ass psyop to me, right? She's trying to convince these young women that the biggest red flag that you can have in dating is a straight man. This is what Doechii want you young women to be thinking about. That Grace Jones wannabe psyop. That a straight man is a red flag. And I mentioned in that live stream that I actually did a research paper when I was in college on the lifestyles of down low black men. And they contribute dominantly to the spread of HIV and AIDS among black women. And so when you're talking about straight black men being your biggest fear, that tells me that the gay black men are safer for you, because you are that femme fatale woman who wants to elevate herself above men. And the only way you can feel your woman empowerment is if you're taking up with these men with bitch-like behaviors and who behave like a bitch on a low key, because any dude that's having sex with another dude is definitely on that female like behavior stuff. He's a princess, girl. But anyways, don't let these psyops get into your heads, young lady. A straight black man is always going to be a winner. I mean, I would contend with a man and the other bitches than a man who is both on men and women. That's too much disease to calculate, I'm getting. So I just don't want to deal with people that are that selfish and unsure of themselves. So you do what you want to do, ladies, but don't let these little rap whores and weirdos convince you that straight black men are not the way to go. It's just weird. It's just weird for them to even be putting that out there, that their biggest red flags are straight men. Doechii, sit your weird ass down somewhere. But anyways, you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.